Welcome to How Tyler Tech Visualizes RoboHead Data with Power BI. My name is Dan Perez. I'm the president of RoboHead. And my main job here today is to introduce Garija Raisam and Mark Astalos from Tyler Technologies. And Garija and Mark are going to walk you through how they used RoboHead Data Direct, or RDD for short, to create several dashboards and charts and different visualizations that they needed within their organization. Um, just to give you a little background, Tyler Technologies has been a RoboHead customer for about 8 years now. But a couple of years ago, Mark reached out because he was doing a lot of data analysis and manipulation outside of RoboHead. He was using the RoboHead reporting module that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and he was pulling all of his RoboHead data down into Excel and combining multiple reports together and doing a lot of manipulation there to be able to get the analysis and the visualizations, the charts and the graphs and so forth that they were looking for. And what he was wondering is, is there an easier way to do this, a more automated way, so that it's not necessary to do all this manual work periodically? And so we started talking to him about RoboHead Data Direct. And what RDD is basically a private database that we create for you with all of your RoboHead data in it. And you may ask, well, what good is a database? I want charts and graphs and the pretty stuff. And that's where Power BI comes in. Power BI is a data visualization tool. And if you may not use Power BI in your organization, but you may use something similar, you may use Tableau or Click, or maybe you don't even have a business intelligence tool, and maybe you're doing charts and graphs in Excel. Um, but in any case, RoboHead Data Direct gives you a way to access your RoboHead data from any of these tools and then use your expertise within those specific tools to build out the dashboards and charts and reports and such that you need. So one of the other people on the call today, in addition to Garija and Mark, is Pavan Kumar, and he's the person at Tyler Tech who actually did a lot of the hands-on building of the various reports and dashboards within Tyler Tech. So he's not going to be speaking today, but he's going to be available to answer any questions that you have during the presentation. So speaking of that, if you do like to want to ask any questions during the session, there are a couple of ways you could do that. There's a chat link on your right that you can use. You can post a question there, and everyone in the conference will be able to see it, and we can respond to it, but other people will see it as well. If you'd like to post a private question that only the Tyler Tech team and our RoboHead team can see, you can use the Q&A tab on the right. Also, just a quick reminder that you can get extra entries to win the prizes we're giving away by adding a RoboHead review on G2. And finally, the recording of this session and all sessions will be available on the main event page when you go to the agenda tab, and you can download it as soon as the session is complete. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Grisha, and she and Mark are going to take you through the rest of the session.
Thank you very much, Dan, for that introduction. I just want to introduce our company. Tyler Technologies is a software company that provides services to the public sector. And we provide end-to-end solutions and empower our local, state, and federal government entities to operate efficiently and transparently with residents and each other. We are a company of about 7,000 people, and the marketing team within the company is about 150 people. And we also have a shared services team that we are a part of within the company. So thank you again, Dan, for that introduction. I'd like to start with a little introduction and a background of how and where we use RoboHead at Tyler. We started using it as a project management tool for our brand marketing creative services team to manage the many projects and associated tasks that they receive. And about 5 years ago, we established a corporate marketing team to provide services to our vertical marketing teams in different areas like campaign operations, digital marketing. And with that, we expanded the usage of RoboHead to these work groups to encourage a consistent project intake process. With the expanded usage, there was a greater need for teams to manage and report on their specific work groups. And along with that, we were also facing some challenges with the number of requests and resource allocation. So we wanted to have the ability to slice and dice the data in different ways so we can look at year over year trends and seasonality. Also, not everyone knew how to do this within RoboHead, and the burden of training all the teams was falling on our one resident expert, Mark. Further, it was time consuming to build visually appealing reports that they could present to their leadership. So, all of this prompted us to look into automating the reporting to ensure that there are consistent standards for reporting and there is easy access to the data. So we'll also talk about a very specific use case around SLA or service level agreement compliance later on in this presentation. So how did we approach this? We came to know about this capability called RoboHead Data Direct, or RDD in short, during a client webinar, and we wanted to learn more about it. We had a meeting with the RoboHead technical team, who then helped us with understanding how it works and what it takes to set up the process, which is outlined in this slide. Essentially, there are two main steps for RoboHead Data Direct setup. The first is to set up an ODBC connection to the source data, and the second is to connect to that data source through a tool like Power BI. So this slide here is a representation of our setup at Tyler. The instructions that RoboHead provided us were pretty detailed and straightforward. The first step was to install a MySQL connector to access the database. The next step was to provide a list of IP addresses of report developers to RoboHead so that they can be allowed to access the data. And lastly, we set up the ODBC connection. So this is just a representation of our setup. So in here, you can see once the ODBC connection is established, you can pull the data into Power BI or any other reporting tool. This is a representation again of the setup we have at Tyler, where we have connected to the ODBC through Power BI, to the ODBC through Power BI. Next came the process of gathering reporting requirements and building the reports. For this, we needed to understand where the data is within the schema. So we were given this massive schema diagram with about 80 tables, and we didn't know really where to start. But again, RoboHead to the rescue. We had a working session to understand what tables we need to look at for the report requirements that we had. And in this slide, you can see the tables that we brought into Power BI on the right side. We have identified and brought in only the tables that we need for our reporting. And once this is done, you're all set to create the magic that your visualization tool offers. Power BI offers several visual options that are easy drag and drop, and you can build anywhere simple to complex reports. For example, what you see in this slide is a quarterly dashboard that shows project requests by vertical marketing teams represented using a tree map visual. This here is an example of a report that can be filtered on various attributes available within your instance. In our case, our shared services work groups use this information to report on their projects within their work group or by the team members or project status, just to name a few. This is yet another example that allows users to view and download the project lists without having to go into RoboHead. The grid you can see can be easily exported to Excel. Next, Mark will talk about a specific use case around SLA compliance for our creative services team that was pretty tough to address within RoboHead. So I'll let Mark take it from here.
Hi. As mentioned, I'm going to speak to a specific use case where the Power BI RDD integration enabled us to save hours of time to run a report that would have otherwise be very manual. As a team, we've recently been placing increased emphasis on setting, meeting, and lowering SLAs, service level agreements, basically trying to provide a more realistic estimate of how long it takes to deliver on projects. And it's also something we wanted to measure to see if or how any process or policy changes might be impacting how long projects take, or to isolate problems or opportunities. So the challenge was, how do we calculate compliance with SLAs? This was something that had never been calculated before. At first, it took several hours to manipulate RoboHead reports in Excel to be able to calculate this. Plus, this would be something others could not determine themselves and would have to take my word for it. And being able to analyze any subset of the data, such as a certain team or project type, would require an additional hours-long report to compile. So we considered, how can we automate this? First, we used RoboHead form rules to automatically add behind the scenes SLA values for different project types to calculate against. Then we used task names and their completion dates to define starting points and endpoints of the durations that we were trying to capture. So from that, we utilized Power BI's integration with RDD to be able to automatically calculate the percentage of time that either entire projects or the initial design stage of projects were completed within SLA. The purpose of calculating two different durations is we were able to differentiate between where delays might be occurring on the design end versus as opposed to on the reviewer client end. So here is an example dashboard. The key data that we are trying to capture is the percentage of compliance. And of course, you see there are the easy ability to apply filters to isolate different variables to see how those affect the SLAs. So the integration enabled us to save hours of time for each report. It's available for anyone at any time to access with a minimal learning curve. It enables anyone to analyze different subsets of the data with the filters with just a click. And this data, in addition to a lot of other data we pull directly from RoboHead reporting, can be used to support successes or isolate opportunities for improvement or education. This can illustrate things like where bottlenecks are occurring, whether our staffing levels are appropriate or our SLA figures are appropriate, or how changing conditions over time affect things, or whether improvement is occurring. So to summarize all you've heard, the RDD Power BI integration saves a great deal of time by lessening the need for ad hoc requests for running reports. Anyone can access it at any time with a user-friendly interface. The visualization enhances the telling of story or observing of trends from the data. And this can greatly facilitate communication to the ultimate decision makers who may not want to dig into the nitty-gritty of pure data. So that's all for us. Thanks for having us, and thanks for listening.
All right, thank you, Mark. That was really interesting. I especially like the way you guys have set up tasks to track specific phases during the project. I think it's a great example of how process and reporting go hand in hand. That a lot of times to get the data that you want in the end, you have to set up your process and your project structure to support those results. So that was great. Thank you both, Mark and Garija, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. Up next, we have Lee Winchell, and she's going to be talking about the RoboHead Adobe plugins, so you can look at how you can manage your RoboHead tasks and reviews without leaving Adobe Creative Suite. Thank you, everyone, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.